Hello guys, Sujaro speaking. Welcome to LJPCBM episode number 867, and today we react to Fairy OddGamer Cars Part 2, the handheld versions, with Zero Night as gas. And we react to this beginning in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Thank you.
Okay, makes sense now.
Overall, this is pretty good. I'm the Fairly Odd Gamer, and I wish you all good luck the rest of your day or night, wherever you.
Hold up, gamer. We're not done yet.
Wait, we're not?
Nope. We still have to talk about the handheld versions of this game.
Wow.
Oh. Well, okay. Sure thing.
Starting with the Game Boy Advance version. And unlike the home console version, this version was developed by Helix, who previously worked on the GBA version of the Incredibles video game, as well as Star Wars The New Droid Army. Unlike the home console version...
Hold on. Continue on.
Version has an isometric view, no open world, and even less playable characters. In fact, the only playable characters in this version are Lightning McQueen, Doc Hudson, the King, and Chick Hicks. The story is extremely similar to the home console version. It even has some of the same dialogue as the home console version, though there are some differences here and there. For example, Chick Hicks never hires the tuner cars to rob Mac in this version. Graphically speaking, it looks pretty good for the system. However, gameplay-wise, it's a slightly different story. Unlike the home console version, there aren't any mini-games to play. It's strictly a racing game from beginning to end. That being said, the racing is kind of bland. You can't really power slide or boost like you can in the home console version, and the only way to get speed boosts is to rely on the random boost pads that appear on the track. Turning can also be a bit loose at times, and the only way to make turns without crashing is knowing when to turn at the right time. However, one thing I find interesting about this version is that I, oddly enough, enjoy the Piston Cup races more in the GBA version than I do in the home console version.
Okay.
And that all has to do with one thing: drafting. Yep, whenever you start drafting behind opponents, you get a little meter that fills up the more you draft.
Makes
and when
sense.
you hold down the R button while the meter is filled, you get a quick boost to help you overtake opponents. Why wasn't this in the home console version? That would have made the Piston Cup races a lot more fun and better design. Oh, and it's also worth mentioning that there's no background music when you race. In fact, there are only 3 songs in the entire game, and you only hear them during the menus and cutscenes.
Okay.
I'd also like to mention that in the story mode, there's one race that doesn't happen in the home console version, in which Lightning is challenged to a road race by the King. So yeah, the King can be used in road races as well, and that's how it also should have been in the home console version. There's also no multiplayer in the GBA version, adding on to the fact that it has way less replayability. Overall, the Game Boy Advance version of Cars is kind of a bland, mediocre racing game. It's not terrible, just nothing amazing is all.
I haven't played much of the GBA version, but I do notice that some of the dialogue in this version are similar, if not word for word, to the dialogue used in the console version. And controlling the cars can be somewhat difficult. They drive way too fast.
Especially if you're playing as Chick. I mean, look at this. Not only is he way too fast, but he has easily the worst handling in the entire game. So don't be surprised if you keep crashing due to understeer every time you play as him.
Not to mention that Chick looks a bit odd in this game. But then again, it's a GBA game, so I can understand why everything looks pixelated.
Okay.
Other than that, I agree with you that the GBA version is somewhat bland. Nothing less and nothing more.
But regardless of how bland the Game Boy Advance version is, I still don't find it as bad as the Nintendo DS version, which was also developed by Helix. Unlike every other version of the game, this version is a minigame collection instead of a racing game, not to mention that most of them all use the touchscreen in some way. Oh, okay, there is some racing in this version, but not much. Let's go through all the minigames in order, shall we? When you first start the game, you only have access to 3 of the minigames, but you unlock more each time you clear 3 minigames in addition to a Piston Cup race. You also have to clear a certain number of rounds in order for that minigame to be considered cleared. First up is Gesundheit, starring Snotrod and the Imports.
Okay.
You control Snotrod with the touchscreen while also avoiding traffic in addition to DJ, Boost, and Wingo on the interstate. If you pass by a field of flowers, that means Snotrod is about to sneeze, and when he does, he gets a ridiculous burst of speed, but it also makes it hard.
Hang on one moment. Be right back. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. I'm back. Just came back for some random things that have nothing to do with this reaction video and LJPCBM React. Continue on.
To avoid traffic. If you crash
Okay.
a total of 5 times, it's game over. This minigame, admittedly, is just alright. Nothing bad, but nothing really that special. Next up is That Blinkin' Light, starring Fillmore and Sarge. It's literally just a game of Simon Says.
Wow.
Nothing more to say there. Moving on, we have Flo's V8 Cafe, starring an all-star cast.
Okay.
This one is honestly one of my least favorite minigames in the collection. What you
Okay.
have to do is rub the stylus on every car that pulls up to the gas station before they get so impatient that they just drive off without gas. And they just keep coming the more you progress through the minigame. It can get very annoying and repetitive with how fast you have to move over to different parts of the station while also rubbing the cars as fast as possible. If too many cars lose their patience, it's game over. So yeah, this minigame honestly is pretty bad. Once you clear the first 3 minigames, you unlock the first Piston Cup race starring Chick and Lightning. But to be honest, I'd hardly call this a race. If you thought the home console versions of the Piston Cup races felt bland, you haven't seen this. It feels more like a minigame rather than a race. The goal is to simply avoid Chick Hicks and other cars throughout the race and make sure you're in front of Chick on the final lap close to the finish line. Chick will constantly ram into you, causing damage to your 4 tires. And if you lose all 4 tires, you will automatically lose the race.
Yeah.
Every time you reach a specific lap, you will also automatically enter a pit stop, allowing you to repair your damaged tires. You basically just tap the glowing bolts on the damaged tires on the touchscreen to repair them. But you also have to do it fast, otherwise Lightning will lose his patience and immediately get back into the race, even if you didn't finish repairing all 4 tires. Another thing that sucks about these races is that, with the exception of the background during the pit stops, all of these tracks look exactly the same. No turns or different lighting, it's always one giant straightaway. So yeah, these races, quote-unquote, are honestly very lame. Oh, and it's also worth mentioning that this is the only minigame you can play in multiplayer, and it's also the only way to play as Chicks, so yeah. Once you clear the first Piston Cup race, you unlock 3 more minigames, and it's like that for the rest of the game. Play 3 minigames, play a Piston Cup race, play 3 more minigames, play a new Piston Cup race, lather, rinse, repeat. Moving on to the next minigame, Highway Hassle, starring Mac. It's a simple sorting minigame where you have to touch and drag the trophies falling out of Mac into the correct column.
Makes
And
sense.
those 4 columns swap around the further you progress. So you can't simply memorize the placement of them for the first round and expect it to be like that for the rest of the game. But again, it's pretty boring, not really that fun. On to the next minigame, Fishin' Mater, starring Mater. As the name implies, it's a fishing minigame in which you have to fish all of the junk from the river. You touch and drag Mater's hook to aim where you want to cast, and once you manage to hook something, you need to rotate the stylus in circles to reel in what you have hooked. This minigame is just okay. Nothing great, but nothing bad either.
Okay.
Next minigame, World's Best Backwards Driver, starring Mater. Now this minigame sounds easy, but it's way harder than it needs to be for reasons I'll get to in a bit. As Mater, you need to drive backwards really fast by building up enough speed and jump high into the sky and collect as many stars as possible. Sounds easy, right? Here's the biggest problem with the minigame. In order to build up speed, you need to alternate between tapping the left and right sides of the touchscreen as fast as possible in order to build up speed. And I'll be honest, I've always hated it when games on the DS use this method. Not only is it pretty annoying to do on the touchscreen, but it also makes it nearly impossible to complete while emulating it. This is the main reason why I couldn't finish this minigame while recording it. I simply just can't beat it using the mouse. That being said, how was your experience with emulating this game on a computer, gamer?
Well, Seth, emulating this game on a computer is more challenging than I expected. Even though I didn't play much of it, I found it pretty bland when it comes to the gameplay. It gets monotonous when trying to do the same thing for each minigame over and over and over again. Not only that, but using the mouse as a stylus pinpoint can make the gameplay even worse. My recommendation for most of these games is to simply just play them on an actual Nintendo DS.
So, because I couldn't finish this minigame, I've decided to use a cheat code that basically unlocks all the minigames at the start. I have finished this game legitimately on an actual DS, so I don't feel too guilty doing this just to get footage. That being said, let's talk about the next minigame, Tractor Tipping, starring Mater and Lightning. Or, I would talk about it if I could get it working properly. The game uses the DS's microphone for the horn, but if you make too much noise with the horn...
Wow! Wow!
And I couldn't emulate the DS's microphone, so the game acts like it's always getting blown into at max, so I kept getting caught every time I tried starting the minigame. Oh well, on to the next minigame, Casadella Tire starring Guido, and surprise surprise, it once again strictly uses the touchscreen. Oh joy. For this minigame, you need to flick the stylus upward to have Guido stack tires to create a leaning tower of tires. But you can't flick the stylus upward too hard, otherwise the tire you try to stack will just bounce off the other tires and fall down. Not to mention, you also gotta watch out for the wind that can blow the tires you throw in a different direction. I don't hate this minigame, but I can easily see why it would be frustrating for the first time player. So yeah, not a very good minigame. Okay, now let's talk about a minigame I personally enjoy. Ramone Style, starring Ramone and DJ. Much like that Blink and Light, it's basically a Simon Says game, but this time it's also a rhythm minigame, which means you also need to tap the correct speakers on DJ to the beat of the rhythm. And sure, it may be simple and nothing too special overall, but I don't know. There's something I find really cool about seeing Ramone bust some moves to some music. Actually, while we're on the topic of that, the music for Cars on the DS borrows almost the entire soundtrack from the GBA version, but it also has some new pieces of music as well. Once again, it's nothing really that amazing overall, but goddamn, I really love Ramone's theme. Just listen to that jam.
Your questions and replies, ladies and gentlemen. Continue on. Wow, okay. Makes sense.
Wow. The next minigame, the drive-in starring Lightning and Sally. Ever played Rush Hour? Well, it's basically that. You slide the cars and trucks in specific directions in order to get Lightning out of the traffic jam and back to Sally. Again, it's fine, but nothing remarkable. Moving on, let's talk about my personal favorite minigame in the collection, Hydraulic Jump Jam, starring Ramone. I swear, it's always the minigames with Ramone I enjoy. He really has style. Anyway, you basically have to score enough points by not only bouncing really high into the air, but also by doing tricks in midair by tracing certain shapes with the stylus. Not only is the music, again, really awesome, but again, I really love seeing Ramone show off his style with tricks. Nothing else for me to say, I just really like this minigame. Finally, let's talk about the last minigame, Willie's Butte starring Mater and Lightning. Unlike the Piston Cup races, this feels more like an actual race. The goal as Lightning is to race against Mater on Willie's Butte while driving backwards. You also have to avoid rocks and cactuses while racing, otherwise you lose speed. It's definitely more fun than the Piston Cup races, but not by much. It's still just a boring straightaway with obstacles to avoid, so overall, pretty meh. The graphics are passable for the DS, but nothing outstanding, and the music is pretty forgettable as well, with a few exceptions. Overall, Cars for the Nintendo DS is honestly not a very good game. I only really enjoyed 2 of the 13 minigames. The other 11 are either boring, poorly designed, or just okay. So with the Game Boy Advance version being mediocre and the Nintendo DS version being bad, that clearly must mean that the PlayStation Portable version is the worst version, right? Well, no, not at all. In fact, not only do I think this is the best of the portable versions, but I also think it's almost as good as the home console version. This version was developed by Locomotive Games, and much like the GBA version, is strictly a racing game without any mini-games or open world. It also has a completely different story from the home console versions. It also does not have any Piston Cup races. The story begins with Lightning McQueen having a race with his friends, when suddenly the road is blocked by the tuner cars.
Hey, nice town, Slim. I think we'll stay for a while. Tear things up a bit.
Tell you what, let's race. If you guys win, stay as long as you like. If we win, you're out of here.
Oh yeah, it's also worth mentioning that in this version of the game, Lightning McQueen is not voiced by Owen Wilson. This is actually the very first time he was voiced by Keith Ferguson, who you may also know as the voice of Blue from Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, Marluxia from Kingdom Hearts, and even Reaper from Overwatch. Since this game, Lightning McQueen would always be voiced by Keith Ferguson outside of the movies. And I'll be honest, I actually didn't know Lightning was being voiced by a different person at first. I can hear the differences now, but Keith does a fantastic job voicing Lightning regardless. Anyway, let's talk about the gameplay. The cars control very similarly to how they do in the home console versions, although I swear they have much tighter control in terms of the power sliding, and much like the GBA version, there are several boost pads you can run over for a burst of speed.
It's like they're made for me.
And like in the GBA version's Piston Cup races, you can draft your opponents, which quickly refills your boost meter. When you clear enough races in story mode, you'll get to race against one of the tuner cars, and beating them will unlock them as playable characters. Wait, let's talk about that. When you first start the game, you can only play as Lightning, Mater, and Sally. But you can also unlock other characters by not only finishing specific races in story mode, but also by finishing some Grand Prix. However, there are also 4 characters as well as a special version of Doc you can unlock only through the game's multiplayer. But if you're like me and don't have any friends who own a PlayStation Portable, you can also unlock those characters by using a cheat code on the main menu. That being said, while the home console version has 12 playable characters, the PSP version has 16 playable characters.
Wow.
17 if you count the fabulous Hudson Hornet version of Doc, which was also just an alternate paint job of the home console versions. So yeah, this version has a lot of characters who are playable in this version, but not in the home console version, which really baffles me. Why can I play as all 4 tuner cars in this version, but not in the home console version? I seriously do not get that at all. Oh, and you can also play as Lizzie in this version, which is hilarious since she's somehow able to reach 100 miles per hour despite being a Model T. Graphically speaking, it certainly looks better than the DS version, but not by too much. Although the FMVs have about the same animation quality as the home console version's cutscenes, so yeah. This version also has most of the soundtrack from the home console version as well, so that's great. It's also worth mentioning that this version is way more challenging than the home console version. But yeah, overall, I think this version of the game is almost as good as the home console version. I say almost because if you thought the crash physics were all over the place in the home console version, you haven't seen this version. Your worst enemies in this game are the other cars because somehow even the slightest tap on the rear side panel is enough to cause you to spin out somehow. I may enjoy the driving just as much as the home console version, but I think the crash physics are worse. Really, the only thing I think is better about this version is the larger playable roster. That being said, if you enjoyed the home console version, I definitely recommend giving the PSP version a try if you can find it and play it.
Out of all the handheld versions, this is without a doubt the best version. It feels like the console version, plays like the console version, and it seems to almost be like the console version. I just think this as the best way to play this game on the go. It's also a joy hearing music straight from the console version. Even though I play this game on an emulator with a keyboard, I don't have as much trouble playing the game that way. Graphically, it looks almost exactly like the console version. It has everything from the drive-in movie theater to radiator springs, and even torque count, which is mentioned in the DS version, but was never actually seen until this version.
Wow.
Overall, the PSP version is the definitive handheld version of Cars. It has decent graphics, decent gameplay, and is overall a decent game. Nothing else to say except speed on, race cars. And that concludes our review of Cars the video game. Whether you play on the GameCube, PS2, Xbox, Xbox 360, Wii, or even the PSP, this is one racing game I recommend you check out, should you get the chance. By the way, thank you, Seth, for joining me in this review.
Yeah, no problem. Now, if you excuse me, I gotta get back to playing Astral Chain.
Not sure what that game is, but anyway. I'm the Fairly Odd Gamer, and I wish you all good luck for the rest of your day or night, wherever you are. Take care, everyone.
Now being said, so that was Cars Part 2, the handheld versions with Zero Night as special guest. Matt, oh wait. Luke Kelly, you share the same name as me? Okay, that makes more sense. Luke Kelly, okay. Continue on. Okay. With that being said, folks, so that was Cars Part 2, the handheld versions with Zero Night special guest. The Fairly Odd Gamer episode number, I'm not sure what episode we're on in the moment, so there you go on that. What do I think about this episode? I think it was amazing. So far this episode, waited to be a success. Anyways, guys, double episode for LJPCBM episode number 867. Hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned for the next one. It's going to be LJPCBM episode number 868, which is going to be about $1 Million Sharks Season 2 premiere. Till next time, Sue Joseph, Bob, peace out, baby. We get more LJPCBM, guys, be soon. Till Wednesday out. See ya.
Given unto me this life I'll never take for granted, and given all the time I failed to really understand it, I never sought to meet the maker of reality, the one who gave the life that which much is always happening, but I try all the time. Why was I the one to see things as I do under the moonlight and the sun? Perception is the question, and the giver holds the key.